Hi everyone, we're going to begin momentarily. I'm just going to add Rabbi Hajioff in. Hold on a sec, add Lawrence. To Monday Night Live. I'm going to be waiting for Rabbi Hajioff to join us for our conversation tonight on borders.
Wow.
Chacham Hajioff, how are you?
Rabbi Reuven.
You made it. We spent a glorious Shabbat together. For those of you that were with us at the Safra Synagogue, we had a young professionals event on Friday night, a beautiful dinner, a Moroccan-themed dinner, and on Shabbat afternoon, we did a reunion Shabbat lunch for our Morocco trip, which was excellent. And the Shabbat was filled with Divrei Torah, with amazing food, amazing people. It was popping and happening. Hopefully, we get to see all of you at our next event.
Experienced it before,
yeah.
But on Shabbat morning, I can honestly say was the most happening, exciting, epic place to be for a service and the kiddush afterwards and the breakfast, and just the whole atmosphere was just electric. It really was. It was a pleasure. Everyone there was really excited. And it's really what we want to see in the synagogues today, because unfortunately, a lot of synagogues are struggling to get back people after COVID. But I don't know what happened over here.
Right.
The place was popping, absolutely popping. It was such a joy
both
to be
all
there.
the Minyanim are popping.
So much
100%.
fun.
And such great people, warm people, friendly people. You know, it's a great environment. We're very, very blessed to be here. All right, but no time for that. Let's talk straight. Let's just jump straight in and talk about our topic. The topic tonight is borders. Should the U.S. or in general, should countries have open or closed borders today? And the subtitle was what are the limitations of Chesed? So Rabbi Hajioff, why don't you kind of walk us through what is the border crisis or issue? Is that where you want to go with this? And then kind of use that as a segue, or you want to go straight about Chesed?
Although there is a border crisis going on right now, there's no doubt about it. The president just went down there. Just so everyone understands, Rabbi Reuven and myself, we try to pick up on topics that are very current, that are happening right now, that are debated, and try to bring in a bit of a Jewish angle to this very, provocative and emotive topic that people are talking about, that are in the news. There's photographs, there's videos. It's painful, it's difficult, but it's worth discussing. Is there a Jewish view on this? And we're going to see very quickly that there are different sides to this debate, but there are some principles that must be discussed. So let's begin where we really should, and that is, to what degree is a nation obligated to protect its citizens on one side? And when I say protect, I just mean physically, but also in terms of feeding them, taking care of them, housing them, taking care of the people who serve the country, especially soldiers and the like, and to obligations every nation have towards other nations around the world. That is really, as I see it, the essence of this debate. And people are falling on both sides. On this one side, that our obligation is to our people. There's a concept in Judaism that the poor people of your community, that they come first. And then there are people like...
So you're saying that we have a moral responsibility first to the people that are within your neighborhood, your city, your state, before you have an obligation to care for the people in other places.
I think that is a very Jewish principle. People may argue with it, but we have an obligation when it comes to tzedakah and chesed. The Rambam delineates this very clearly, that first of all, tzedakah begins at home. And when I say at home, I literally mean in your home, your own family, then your community, then the general population of the city. Then you can start to think about the rest of your country. Does that mean you can neglect other people, other
Maybe
nations?
You want to,
that's a good question.
Well, my question is, why is that the principle? I mean, maybe there's wisdom in kind of like on double clicking on it and trying to understand what is maybe we could articulate it for our listeners. What is the argument there? Like, what's the difference if I give a guy charity in Manhattan versus someone in California? I'm doing my charity thing. Explain the obligation? Break it down. Why
So
is it that I
it
need
seems to be that
Kozen?
if we don't take care of our own community, we're going to end up at some point just spending, as far as I see it, different opinions here, outside, and then the people in your community become poor, you become poor, and then you'll become a nitzrich, a person who is yourself going to be needing charity. So there's a bit of a downward spiral that comes with this. You've got to take care, if everyone were to take care of their own community to the degree that they can, and I'm not saying that every community in the world can, by the way, right? There are communities that need outside help. I mean, let's be honest. The Jews in Israel, there are many poor people there. They need outside help. The Jews during the Holocaust, they weren't able to take care of themselves. They needed outside help and support, right? So there's obviously the Jews in Ethiopia. Talk about our community. I'm sure this is true for every community throughout the entire world. But if we all lock down our own community first and make them a priority, seems to be the Rambam telling us that everything else will flow well. What are your thoughts?
But don't you listen? I agree with that. I think that there's the way I think of it is that remember Rudy Giuliani, his policies.
Windows.
I think it was called the
Yeah.
broken windows. And the one thing that he realized, if you go into neighborhoods that are broken windowed or graffiti and you lead it that way, it just gets worse over time. It does not get better. And therefore, you fix the window, you get rid of the graffiti immediately, you constantly focus on upgrading and elevating the surroundings. And that has a powerful effect at changing the nature of a neighborhood, making it better,
that policy was very
uplifting it, and so on and so forth.
More about getting rid of crime
Very
in
controversial.
communities. That was really the idea.
Correct.
If you get in for a broken window, you'll find many other crimes which are greater than that. Very controversial. Many minority
Correct.
communities got very upset with that. You can't deny it was effective, but at what cost?
Right. No, statistically, we saw it was effective. And that's I'm not arguing whether or not broken windows was the right policy. I think the idea of looking at an area that is struggling and saying, you know what, I'm not going to ignore my neighborhood, my city, my state. I'm going to first work here and build those concentric circles moving outwards. And this way, I know I could build a team of people that we're upgrading the world around us. Like I do think that America does have a responsibility to its
no doubt
poor
about it.
first.
Every nation,
and
every person actually, right? A nation is a collective group of people, has the choice to spend their tzedakah dollars any way they want. If they want to give charity to other nations and spend elsewhere and to improve the world that way, that's a wonderful thing. I don't think anyone is going to dispute that. What we're trying to figure out at what cost to your own people. That's the discussion over here, Rabbi. At what cost to your own people? What is, because every dollar spent abroad is not being spent here. So let's talk about this border crisis, because that's our topic. So now we've got to figure this out, right? Because, only everyone in Congress and every president for the past, I don't know, number of administrations trying to figure out as well. Let's try to think about this. We have a situation where people are coming through the border illegally. There are people who come legally, but the people who come illegally, right? And you can call them whatever. Right. They keep changing the names and making something inappropriate. But let's just say that's what it is. They're coming in and they're undocumented. What obligation do we have as a country, as a community, to bring those people in, give them the basics of food and shelter and all the other good things that we, as citizens, receive as well? I have someone I know very, very well. And when I suggested as an idea that maybe there's too many people coming in for us to handle, the infrastructure cannot handle it, he went ballistic with me, called me a racist, and said that I have no chesed in my heart.
Okay. Well, I mean, you have to be able to hear the arguments both ways.
There's different arguments
right?
over here. It's not so simple. People are struggling with this. From the Jewish angle, here's the question. Let's just double click on the Jewish angle for a second. And that is, the Jewish people are people who want to do chesed. We want to make the world into a better place. Let's take that as a given. let's take that as the optimal. We know that Judaism obligates us to give tzedakah, right? The Rambam will give us certain strategies in certain areas and priorities, but in the end, everyone's got to give something. We know that non-Jewish nations, according to Judaism, also have to have chesed as their basic structure, set up fair and just legal systems. Is one of the 7 mitzvot that every non-Jewish nation has, according to Judaism. So how far does this go? That's what I'm still trying to figure out. How far?
But we also know that true chesed isn't an infinite level of giving. That even within chesed, there are boundaries, which is why we say that chesed has to be tempered with something called gvura, with justice. You just can't have infinite chesed. As a matter of fact, we know that God, the world itself, we know, couldn't survive on justice, and that he had to use chesed. Olam chesed Hashemi baneh. King David says that the act of creation itself, like based on the Ramchal, is an act of chesed, and therefore we know that Abraham, our patriarch, he created a reality where he was teaching monotheism, but it wasn't just regular monotheism. It was chesed. It was a monotheism that expressed this level of kindness.
Let's just get straight to it, because we're adults. Thousands of people coming over our border. Is that a chesed that this nation, or any nation, forget America because everyone's getting way too emotional about it. Let's just call it, Atlantis. Live based on Atlantis, and there's people who want a better life for themselves. Let's leave aside the people who really are under, but they want a better life for themselves, which they're entitled to, because everyone's entitled to a good life. Let's just take that as a given. And we expected, as any nation expected, to bring them all in. As the land of Israel expected to bring in all the other nations allowed to come in. And to what degree? Because at some point, everyone would agree there's a limit. There's a limit. Is there not?
Mm-hmm. No, I listen. When you come to a place where there's no way of getting in, then you become like Sodom and Gomorrah. You become a sodomite. That there was absolutely no kindness there. That was the opposite extreme. But in Judaism, we're trying to express balance, and therefore my concern is that, well, yes, let's have open borders. It's good for economics. It's good for we're racist, like you said. If you don't take people in, we're Americans. We have all the resources. We'll be good. That's not true. We don't have infinite resources. And we just saw what happened when we printed trillions of dollars, what that does to our economy and more importantly to the world economy. It's like we'll survive the storm right now with inflation, but the poorer countries around the world are struggling.
It breaks my heart. I tell you, terribly. I see these videos,
terrible.
And I'm not coming from a political angle. I promise you, I just see these videos of other nations and other people coming in, and I know people in my community who are undocumented. If you have a conversation with any of them, it breaks your heart. Anyone who's got a beating heart in their body cannot help but feel absolute remorse and feelings to all these people. Rabbi, it's very, very hard. You cannot, and they talk about their cousins and their siblings and how they need to come here and they're struggling and it's dangerous, and you want to just bring them all in. I'm telling you, when I hear their stories, that's my reaction. I must just share one quick story, if you don't mind, and then I want to hear your view on this, because I want to fight backwards and forwards on this, because I want to give both sides. There's a famous story which is discussed about a man walking down the beach, and there are thousands and thousands of starfish that washed up onto the sand. Thousands and thousands of them. And there was a guy walking up and down the beach because the tide had come in and had got out early. And these starfish were starting to, bake and die in the sun. And this guy was going down the beach and he was picking them up and throwing them in the water. And go to the next one, pick it up, throwing the water. Go there, pick it up, throwing the water. And some guy saw this guy and said, this is ridiculous. There are thousands, if not 100,000 starfish that are on the shore, and you're not even making a dent. It doesn't matter. And he lifted up. Right. He lifted up on starfish. It matters to this one, and he threw it in. So I mean,
right. Great story. Listen, I think that you and I we're not arguing about whether we both agree that immigration is an important part of a country's ethos. It's an important part of their kindness muscle, and that there has to be immigration. I think that we may disagree on, well, what does that look like exactly? We need to create limitations. It can't have a sort of circumstance where you're going to absorb, 20 million people and bring into your country because you want to do chesed,
And then you have
destroy
no
your
more
country doing it.
chesed to do. You're limiting yourself.
And chesed, correct. You have to create a situation where you're able to absorb these people in a way that's responsible to them and, more importantly, to your people first. So, I think that the crisis was created a little bit because of the bureaucracy that goes into applying to get into this country. We probably should spend more time building a better infrastructure for applications and bringing people in. Maybe put more resources there, and then you'll have less of this pressure at the borders where people are breaking laws.
Let's leave America out of it because
creates all kinds of.
It's now so political. We can't have a debate on it. I want to say, is there a precedent in Jewish history where the Jewish people took in outside nation they needed their help? Is there a precedent?
There is.
I can think, I'm sure there's many examples, and I'm sure there's always been pockets. We're seeing now the present state of Israel is unbelievable. I think the population has doubled, in the past 20, 30 years, just on the amount of people we've taken in from Jewish people from other nations around the world, Think of, Iran, 1979, and think of all the other nations that we've had to, and Ethiopians, right? We've both been and led trips. We saw many Ethiopian centers that have been set up, for thousands and thousands of these individuals who come with nothing, the shirt on their backs, not even in some cases. Incredible chesed towards their own people, around the world. But historically, have we seen anything? Is there precedent in Jewish history?
It's funny because having the conversation about Israel is also very controversial, especially with what's happening right now in Israel. How does the government deal with Palestinians living in Israel, as far as, forget about illegal immigrants, but you have a population problem inside your own country, and that's a super complicated conversation that I don't know I don't want to address here because it's too sensitive, and I don't know all the nuances to speak about it in a way that's meaningful. But I will say that I think that as far as a government's concerned, the government has a responsibility to its people, all of them, irrespective of their beliefs. I think that we got to be careful about having open policies because they never work. I'm as a father and as a disciplinarian and an educator, I just went today. I took him to the American Dream Mall. He had off today for MLK. So I've never had a chance to teach him how to ski, for whatever reason. And I took him to the skiing place there, and I taught him how to ski. And right away he falls. So he looks at me like, "Can you pick me up? Like, you're 10 years old. Like, you're going to get up yourself. Like, I'm not going to help you up." If I would always be there to hold his hand and helicopter parent him, I would be destroying him, not building him.
What are you learning?
Part of the goal of I'm saying that even here, when we're bringing people in and we're going to be helping people, there has to be space for for people to do things in a system. There's a systematic way of getting in. There's no just rushing through the borders. There's no just coming in. There's a process. In the same way that a father creates a process in terms of teaching and educating, a government has to create a process of teaching and educating. It's got to be fair and just. Of course, there were some times where you felt you were stuck. I helped them, but it can't be this endless supply of
most
giving
people,
and giving and giving.
Would definitely agree with that. But there's got to be something. I was thinking when I mentioned the question of one incident I can think of in the book of Joshua, it talks about how Joshua was going into the land with the Jewish people for the first time, right? And there was a nation that tricked Joshua, literally tricked him. They dressed up so they come far away, and they made moldy bread and old water, and they lied, and they said, "We come from a far-off nation. We're not a threat to you." Actually, they were a threat. They'd come from a local nation. They were actually Canaanim. They were Canaan nation that wanted to destroy the Jewish people. Anyway, they were scared, so they lied, and they made Joshua sign a peace contract, and he said, "You can stay in our country and become part of our nation," which is itself unbelievable, right? Because they were a potential threat, but he let them stay. He trusted them. Later on, the other nations saw these nations, and said, whoa, 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 whoa. You can't make peace with them. We hate the Jews. We hate Joshua, right? We're going to attack you. At that point, Joshua could have said, well, I did my best, but I'd have to get out of my way, right? And just like protect you from this other nations. And Joshua said, no. Once you become part of our nation and we accept you, you are 1,000% part of who we are. Now, that may sound very obvious for now. Yeah, sure. Once you become a nation, you remember the nation, you're a full member. But we're talking thousands of years ago, when people were marauding and attacking and killing, indiscriminately. And here, for thousands of years, and it's put in our scriptures, in our Tanakh, in the book of Joshua, that we said no. Once you come as an outsider and you're in a need, we're going to take care of you, even at the expense of other nations coming to attack you, which we're not really part of. We're going to protect you as well. And they did become a full-fledged member of the Jewish people for history. For history.
But that's different because those people were already within the borders of Israel. They're already living
I hear what you're saying.
the boundaries of Israel.
They should have gone. They were about to be driven out. We let them stay.
But they didn't. But they were there. Meaning, like, there's a difference between having, like, absorbing like a small city and saying, well, this city is now part of our country, right? And then saying, well, no, you're. And that's fair. That's because at that point they become part of your country. So let's say, for example, if America annexed, Canada, right? Which they could easily do.
A complete waste of time, but interesting to even think about it.
They could, in theory, and absorb the whatever, 58 million, 60 million people that live there. Big deal. So they'll take them in, and they all become Americans, and they have a responsibility to protect them, govern them, and so on and so forth. That's different than what we're talking about. You and I are talking about, the other people coming from other borders, people that are leaving their countries because it's not safe there.
It's a level of opportunity as well. There's people who, I'll be honest, work with us. They can live, they have food and shelter and basic necessities in their countries. They want a better life. They're telling me straight up, and they're like, we want to come to America, or we want to come to Israel. We would come to England.
One of the former presidents of the United States said something like, why do we got to get all the druggies and all the drug cartel people and all the gang members? Why can't we get the intelligent, thinking, refined people from other countries? Why are we getting of society?
Maybe that's the answer. In their own countries, they are doing fine, and therefore it's the people who are in need. I mean, let's take the other side for a second, right? Talk about need, right? The Jewish people, we ourselves have been refugees many, many times, and we had to be absorbed into other countries, and many times we were prevented even into the land of Israel, if you remember, right? When the British mandate was in Israel,
the British mandate,
right? Our own people, the Jewish people, could not enter into what was then called Palestine. Were not able to enter into the country, right? And many of them were sent back. And look at the history of Ellis Island. If you've ever been there, it's just a really fascinating visit. I found it very, very telling. There were many people who got to come in, thank God. And America is a chesed, a Medina shel chesed. There's no doubt about it. It is a country of chesed.
How many Jews, during World War II were sent back?
There were. But there were many, many who were let in.
But okay, that's true. So how? Okay, so what is the argument for letting everyone? Is there an argument for letting everyone in?
I don't.
At any point,
I
any
can't
number?
imagine anyone who would say, "Open your border and just let everyone in," right? And anyone who says that definitely has a front door, right? So to their house, and will not let everyone in. So I can't imagine.
What is the function of a border in general?
I guess that's probably the question we should have started with. They have two roles, right? Keeping people in, safe, and keeping people out. Okay?
There's more than that. I think part of a border is about preserving a national identity. That this is a demarcation. So you're now in the land of America. This is my law. These are my laws. These are my customs. These are my people.
Because what are customs, what is nationality, right? It's not a racial concept. America is not
Whatever
a
it is,
racial.
the laws of the law. Well, the laws of the United States of
But
America
I should
begin
say, and
here
you may
at
not want
this
to, people
line.
may not want to hear this, but Japan is a democracy, and they do allow people in. But becoming a citizen of Japan, I think it's tough in America. It's extremely difficult. They want to keep a certain ethnic look.
Japan, but Japan's an island. You know, they don't even
They
have
have
borders.
people
I
who
mean, they have
want to come
natural
in, and
borders. They have
becoming a
no
citizen
bordering
is
anything.
very, very difficult. There's a certain, it's an ethnic look and trend that they want to keep among the people inside. So,
Well, that's because they're going through massive demographic issues. You know, they're not having children. They realized this 40 years ago, where China did not actually, and they've been doing things within their country to help maintain their population. China is 10 years from now, they're
I mean,
saying, is going to be down the
major,
hole
major.
population-wise. Majority 60 over 65 to 70% of their population will be over the age of 65 in the next 10 years. So they have issues, but like again, as far as the borders are concerned, from my perspective, the function of a border is to maintain order, to be able to enforce law, the laws of the land, and additionally to protect
I'm going to say something
identity.
controversial. Then that's exactly what North Korea is doing. Then North Korea is doing nothing wrong, except the fact that starving.
I'm not saying that you can't let people. That does not mean that you're not taking in people into your country.
Okay,
I'm just talking about why we have borders.
Now what do we do?
Argument of
Now
like,
there's people
no
knocking your
borders,
door
no
who
borders
want a
means
better
like there's
life.
no.
What do we do?
We create a very clear process where we allow these people to apply to get in, and we care for them. You know, once they're able to go through the process, there has to be a process that allows these people in. It shouldn't just be.
Alav Shalom, who was being interviewed by the BBC, and I can't remember which crisis it was. It wasn't Ukraine, obviously, but there was some previous crisis. I think it was Poland, and people needed to come in. And the interviewer said, "Well, Rabbi Sachs, Lord Sachs, how many people should we be allowing in the country right now?" And he actually said, he gave a number. I can't remember what it was, but he thought 30 to 50,000 people is a fair amount. You can make a calculation and say, these are the people who need to come in. There's a hotel I stay at when I visit my parents in London. And I'm going back for another visit soon. It's right next, 2 minutes walk from my parents' home. And I called them up and I said, I'd like to book a room for. And they're like, no rooms available. I said, well, the hotel's closed down. And they're like, no, we're full of Ukrainian refugees right now. The government opened up this hotel and filled this hotel in totality to refugees from the Ukraine.
Every country took Ukrainians in, but they all capped it. Let's say there was 1 million Ukrainians that were displaced, and they dispersed them. I mean, Israel took in a tremendous amount of Ukrainians.
In planes and ship them out from over the border.
Right. So, but yeah, that's great. That's amazing. But what's the number? Is it more than 5% of the population? 1% of the population? I think the real question is, well, how much can you really absorb without it disrupting completely the infrastructure that you have right now?
That I do not know the answer to.
And so what are the limitations?
I think you said it so well before, Rabbi. Chesed is a great thing, but if it's not tempered with gevurah, it's lost. That's why Abraham was ish chesed, but he gave birth to a Yishmael. It's unbridled. And even his wife said, it's time for Yishmael to go. And he said, no. And God said, listen to your wife. She knows better than you, Abraham. Sarah knew exactly what to do. Comes on Yitzchak, and he's all gevurah.
Right.
But even that was too much, because he had to deal with an Esav as a child, right? When gevurah is too strong,
right,
there needs to be, you have a thesis, you have an antithesis, but you need a synthesis. There needs to be a equation. So I don't like hearing people from both sides saying no one or everyone. Right? It's not a stumble game. Right. It just doesn't work that way. But as Jewish people, it starts with your community, starts with your own people, and there is an obligation for chesed which goes outside your boundaries and borders. There's no doubt about it. I believe Israel is, I won't say it's a perfect representation of that, but it's a pretty good one.
Totally is. You know, there's this. I'm just. This is like a strange thought that just popped into my head. I just want to share it. It might be relevant. I might be off in this one. But there's a famous piece by Rav Kook. Kook was the former chief rabbi of Israel, and you know, we all know him to be very pro-vegetarianism, but people don't know that he was anti-vegetarianism also. He believed that, you know, you could be a vegetarian during the week, but on Shabbat you had to have some meat, you know. And he said that the reason why he was anti-vegetarianism is he believed that vegetarianism was an expression of a reality that's going to happen when Mashiach comes. Or, the way he says it, I think is so much more eloquent, when mankind is able to perfect the relationship between Ben Adam and Chavero. When we're able to maintain that relation between man and man, then we can go ahead and become vegetarians. The fear, he says, that becoming a vegetarian prematurely will create a fictitious reality where you believe that your relation with man and man is okay, and now we got to take care of the animals. And I want to extend that argument over here a little bit and say that, you know, maybe the argument for borders, balanced borders, we'll call it, better than just borders, is that we, in the same way that you and I have a responsibility to first care for our Ainiim, right? If we start looking around the world and care for everyone else's Ainiim, we'll lose the ability of caring for the Ben Adam Chaver, for the people around us. We might think that it's okay. I could ignore the guy here. He's an American. He's lazy. He has all the opportunity. He's not taking it seriously, and that's the danger of you know, having, and you know, as Shlomo Melech says, the eyes of the fool are always at the ends of the earth. Well, he's not looking he's not looking at the things that are in front of him. He's always looking outward at the
Green
horizon.
Movement said it very nicely, actually. You got to think global, act local. Now, they said in terms of, you know, recycling, right? But I think there's a chesed principle that works very, very nicely. We do think locally. We care globally what's happening, right? That's what Jews are obsessed with the news, right? But especially Israelis. Israelis love the news, you know? Every hour in the hour, chadashot. But in the end, it's got to be, I got to act local. And I got to fix my community. And that's what a Medina Shel Chesed is. It sounds counterintuitive. If you're a country of Chesed, everything should be open for everyone. And the answer is there's limits, right? If there's no boundary, then everything good will flow out of it. You know, there will be no good for the next generation. So I personally think, and I know people may disagree with me, I think America's done an amazing job of opening. Now, I think a lot of the giving they do outside is strategic, which they're entitled to do. A lot of it's military, all right, in terms of its own protections and its own future. I hear that as well. But ultimately, seems to be the consensus is that America is a Medina Shel Chesed, you know, and has done a lot of good to the world and exported a lot of goodness. I believe that Israel, 1,000%, is a Medina Shel Chesed. I mean, just one example comes to my head right now. You know, the methodology of irrigation. Israel created this drip pipe method, I think, and they exported this knowledge for free to pass out. There's videos you can see online. They don't show this. They show all the crazy stuff, right? Of Israel, you know, was he hurting other people? But that's not the situation, right? They send a lot of time, a lot of people abroad to parts of Africa that obviously have a great need for water, and teach them how to irrigate their fields in order to bring produce out.
Yeah, but locally, the argument's going to be they're spending all this effort, money, in teaching these other nations to do whatever they got to do, and you still have a tremendous amount of poverty locally.
So that's my final question: is
tight balance you got to be worrying about.
To remove all local poverty before we start helping other people. I mean, that's the million, if not billion-dollar question, or actually, in America's case, trillion-dollar question.
Right.
We have a big national debt, big numbers we can't even fathom. Do we have to fix everyone in our country before we can help anyone?
I would say that at least an overwhelming majority of those people that need to be helped first.
I don't know.
You can't solve the world's problems.
Yeah.
You can't. They're too big. They're too nuanced. We see that America's failed repeatedly over and over again, trying to solve the world's problems. They just can't do it. There's too many nuances. And I believe this is a great quote from Rav Tzadok Cohen of Lublin. He says that there will be a time, later times at the end of days, where mankind will have the ability of traveling to the farthest stars in the universe, but at the same moment they'll lose the ability of going within themselves. Because you're always looking outward. It's the same idea. You have to look inward first. Your people have to be treated. You have to be taken care of first.
Yeah,
That's to me my argument. I'm not saying that we don't take in immigrants, but you got to care for your people first.
No doubt about it. Did we cover everything? There's a balagan house over there. Just take my speed.
I believe so. Oh, I thought you were in a shook. I didn't realize you were at home.
But my house is a shook. My office especially. When I say I'm in my office, suddenly everyone gravitates here and decides to use it as their home base.
Of course. All right, Sadiq.
Okay, I mean,
thank you so much for this conversation. Stay tuned next week.
To this conversation, no doubt about it. Can we just summarize it a little bit?
This is
no, I wanted you to do it, actually.
Go for it.
I think we started with the idea that every Medina, every nation is judged according to the amount of chesed that they do. Right? And that judgment actually happens at Rosh Hashanah after every nation.
Right.
Everyone is judged. And what are they judged on? How they treat their own people and how they treat each other and how they treat the rest of the people in the world. And the Jewish people are no exception. We have a natural, you see it, right? Every organization out there you see that wants to help the world, there's always a Jew and there's a Goldberg and a Goldstein, you know what I'm saying? And it's Will and a Dweck. There's always someone out there who's like involved in that chesed movement. The amount of charity the Jewish people give in relation to our numbers is way off the charts. Way off the charts. Question is, to what degree are we obligated to take care of our own people first? To what degree do we have to become the policeman of the world and the hotel of the world in order to bring those people in and give them a chance for a better life, leaving aside the people who are really in danger around the world? But there's many such people. I think right now there's 40, 50 wars happening in the world right now. Are we obligated to suck them all in? And every refugee has to come into our borders, into our nation? What does that do to national character? What does that do to the safety of our people? What does that do to the infrastructure of hospitals and schools and roads? All right? It sounds a little bit, simplistic, but that's really what it comes down to. This is what the governments are dealing with. I think we can say that from Jewish history, I can see that the Jewish people have historically, when we've had control of our own land or the ability to run governments in other lands, will go out of their way to welcome in strangers, because we were strangers in Egypt.
Right. Listen, America has always been, like you said, a country of great chesed and kindness. It's known for it. But if America becomes a country that is kulo chesed, without any gvura, it has no future.
I think that is a grave danger. That is a grave danger to our own continuity. Yeah. But as we said before, every starfish counts. Right? You save one life, you save the entire world.
They do, but again, but it's lifeboat ethics. You know what I'm saying? You could take one more person on your boat. Everyone's drowning out there. But if you take one more, your whole entire boat will sink. There has to be a limit.
I hear. Boundaries are important. Rivers have them, or we'd all drown. Oceans have them, or we'd all drown. There's got to be some kind of boundaries. Okay.
100%.
Good stuff. Peace to everyone.
Shalom.
To the discussion.
Stay tuned next week. Looking forward to continuing the conversation. If there are any specific topics, please give us your feedback. And if there are any specific topics that you would like for us to discuss over the next coming weeks, please post them down there. And we will definitely let you know what we're doing them. We're happy to do them. We're looking for new ideas. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please leave your feedback behind. Wishing you all an amazing week. Till next Monday Night Live.
Thank you, Rabbi. Bye.
Thank you, Rabbi Hagioff.